I'm happy to be here. My name is Robert Young. I work in the oil and gas business for many years, almost 32 years, even though I can't believe it. And I've worked in actually over 25 countries and been to some interesting places. I started after I got out of university in Los Angeles. My first job was with Aramco in Saudi Arabia. This is like 32 years ago. And at the time, it was kind of a shock. One day I'm surfing on the beach on the Pacific Coast Highway with bikinis, and the next day you got to be very respectful. So anyways, those were the days almost before air conditioning. It was hot. But anyways, so I started on the international front, and somewhere in the middle, I decided to get an MBA degree just so I can understand the mechanism of money, how money is coming in, and how money is going out, and match it with the engineering. What I do, right now I'm a consultant, and I've worked with Shell Oil Company, with Chevron, Exxon. Actually, it was with Exxon in Saudi Arabia. And I've worked with many different companies. I've worked with NOCs, national oil companies, such as Petrobras, Pemex in Mexico, Petrobras in Brazil, Pertamina type Indonesia, almost like PTT, but I haven't worked with PTT yet. And then international oil companies like the Shells and the Chevrons and whatnot, the BPs, and then the medium-sized energy companies. So I get a chance to work in 3 different dimensions. I work in different countries, 25 plus countries, whether I'm working in Brazil on the deep water pre-salt section, on offshore semi-submersibles or drill ships, I'm project manager. Or I'm working on land in Colombia, where there's these narco guys, everybody's shooting and kidnapping and stuff. And I'm the only Anglo guy there, of course, so they're always going to shoot for me. And then I work like on jackups up in, say, Mexico or offshore Egypt and so forth and so on. So what I do is I work in different countries. So you've got the national culture, let's say Mexicans versus Brazilians versus Thai versus Indonesians. Everybody's in a different world, as we've been listening to with the previous 2 speeches. And then you've got the corporate culture. The corporate culture of PTT and the way it's operated is different from Pertamina, as well as Petrobras, as well as Pemex, as well as Exxon. So the company is always right because they're paying the bill. And so you've got to balance that. And the 3rd dimension is the project at hand. In other words, we're going to drill a well maybe 100 kilometers offshore Rio de Janeiro, for example. Or we're going to drill a well offshore Rayong or Songkla. Or onshore in Udon Thani, what is it, Nampong. So what's happening is you get to work in the middle of these 3 different dimensions. You got the reality, what you're going to be working with, and things change all the time. They plan, which is another issue that we're discussing, is that when you make a plan, a lot of times the plan changes, and many times there is inflexibility, change management that is, inflexibility to change the plan. So you're sort of stuck in continuing with a plan that you know is wrong, that you're actually going to be going over a cliff sooner or later. But again, who's going to tell the upper management that we're going to be going over a cliff? That's why they hire a consultant, such as myself, because they're easy come, easy go, right? Anyways, so anyways, this what we're going to get into here is risk management, and I try to make it simplified because a lot of people think risk management is a very difficult subject. Actually, it's very simple. And it can be used for oil and gas exploration or production projects. But basically for any business or personal endeavor, for banking business, insurance, for 7-Eleven business, or even personal endeavors, risk management. Should I get married or should I be single? You use the same techniques, you know what I mean? And you say, what's the probability of happiness, high or low? What's the impact on my bank account? So, you know, I mean, this is something you could use for your own personal good, too. It's not just anyway, so what I'm going to use is a kind of a serious example. This Deepwater Horizon, they had a big problem. It kind of caught fire and sank. And, but anyway, so many people mistakenly believe that risk management is too complicated. And what I'm going to try to do is demonstrate that it's really not a big deal. And it does have some interesting feedback that can be used. Okay, the risk, for example, the Deepwater Horizon with the semi-submersible right there, in working offshore Louisiana, about 2010, that's when I was working in Rio de Janeiro. And they killed 11 workers. They went down with the rig. Usually on a rig like this, you're going to have about 120 people, plus or minus 20. And it created a massive offshore oil spill, considered to be the largest oil spill in the world. Anyways, what was interesting is this rig here, the semi, they're drilling. You use this kind of a rig when you're drilling, let's say, deeper than 100 meters, say 100 meters plus, down to, say, 3,000 meters. So you're going to use a floating rig or a drill ship to drill from 100 meters down to 3,000 meters of water depth, and then you hit what is called the mud line, and then from the mud line, you drill maybe from 3 kilometers to maybe I've drilled 7 kilometers below the mud line. And that was just done recently in Papua, deep as well in Southeast Asia. And that was interesting. Well, that's another situation. Anyways, okay, so this is the same rig, a little bit closer with all the fire modes here, trying to put the fire out. It's saying little here. Basically, what happened, this was a British Petroleum job, and I used to work in the Gulf of Mexico on these rigs and jackups and same sama. And it's almost like mass production and easy to become complacent. You know, people think, okay, we do this day in, day out for like 10, 20 years. Nothing's going to happen, nothing new. Well, something did happen. So you really can't be complacent. You're always got to be on guard and not take anything for granted. And this accident here cost something like $40 billion. 40 billion is $40,000 million. 40,000 and of course, it probably could have been avoided right here. The Oil Spill Commission, which was a U.S. government commission here, revealed that BP did not sacrifice safety to make more money. In other words, that was what a lot of the protesters were saying. But that some decisions had increased risks. Well, what this is getting to is that, and what I'm going to be getting to in the paper here, is that a small risk today could become a big risk tomorrow. And a big risk today could become smaller with some effort, some brain power, teamwork, management. Okay? So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to identify risks, little baby risks, which can grow and grow and grow and get out of control. And what we're going to try to do is identify those risks and then bring them back into control, bring them back within a manageable structure. Okay? A lot of people, unfortunately, they don't believe in trying to control risks. They think it's almost like alhamdulillah, what will be, will be. There's nothing we can do about it. So a lot of cultures have that. Well, this is the way it was to be. And I said, well, no. We can try to fix this. Anyway, why bother to use risk analysis? Well, you know, official jargon is really to identify, assess, and manage the risk. You cannot identify a risk, well, you cannot fix the risk. Okay, so that's the first step in the battle, is to identify we got a problem here versus this is not really a bad problem at all. Okay. And then assess by saying, do we have a bad problem or is this just a minor problem? But again, it could be minor today and getting very bad tomorrow. And then IT department. That's why the petroleum people in IT are usually in different worlds altogether. But IT is always trying to help, you know? We're all right. Just leave us alone. Anyways, okay. So after we identify that we have a problem, and after we assess that it's a small problem, a medium problem, or a big problem, then we're going to try to manage the risk. And because we can't manage everything under the sun, we're going to try to manage the big risks, or the risks which are growing, and try to keep it under control. So that's really the job that we're talking about. And in the face of uncertainty. And help identify events that may affect the organization's ability to achieve its objectives. As I had mentioned, when you're drilling an oil well, and right now, for example, this well I did recently in Papua New Guinea, well, Papua, Indonesia, it was 3,000 kilometers from Jakarta, south, so you're way out there in the middle of nowhere. Deep, it was about 2 kilometers of water. This was about 6.5 kilometers below the mud line. This is a well that was budgeted for $82 million, and it ended up costing $220 million. One well, one exploration well. And to make it even more sad, there was no oil and no gas. So it was just leave it with concrete, move the rig off, and kiss it goodbye. So it's basically like a big casino. The oil and gas business is the biggest in the world. But of course, you people, when you buy gasoline and pay for your electricity bill, you subsidize these people. So it's basically all getting washed down to the end consumers, sooner or later. Anyways, okay, so what happens here is you design the well, we're going to be drilling this well, we get the partners to sign the well, the general manager from partner number 1, partner number 2, partner number 3. Actually, one of the partners was PTT. And the other partner was Impex. And so what happened was, everybody signs, we got this basis, the basis of design, which was the assumptions that Singha was mentioning. If your basis of design is incorrect or not fully thought out, your model, your geologic model or financial model or economic model is not correct, and you design everything on top of a false model, then everything's going to crater. It costs a lot of money. And this is kind of what happens, is that you make an assumption, and then you make a plan how we're going to overcome this, build whatever we're building, whether it's a skyscraper or a new business or make a movie or drill an oil well. But the assumptions, especially fundamental assumptions, are wrong. And you don't realize they're wrong until you're halfway into the game, or halfway or closer to the end of the game. Then it gets very scary because nobody wants to say anything that, ooh, we're building our house on sand. The higher we build, the more we're going to sink, and the more cracks we're going to get in the walls. And so that's when that other issue. So who's going to be the messenger, talk to upper management that we got a big problem here? Because a lot of times they end up shooting the messenger as part of the solution, and especially again the consultant. So, this is the interesting thing about this whole meeting that I find is that it's a people, well, not a problem, it's a communication issue. And, I'm an engineer, and engineers are not the best at speaking with people. I mean, they work with their computers. They're happy, you know, to leave me alone. Paper in, paper out, it's just fine. As well as project management. So if you're going to be shy and you can't deal with people, I don't know whether you could be a very good project manager or not. You know, that's kind of where it's coming to. On the other side of the coin, as we all know, there are good management, but there's a lot of poor management. And there are a lot of managers, you know, upper management that really shouldn't be there. They're there for whatever the reason, whatever the country, the culture, whatnot. And so if you're trying to tell them that there's something, a house on fire or something, they may not understand that, which is what Kuhn Pencer was talking about. In their world, in their mind, they don't really understand what you're talking about. You know, and you as a project manager are trying to speak to them that we got a problem. And in their mind, they say, this is not a problem, or they'll say, just fix it. That's your job. What are we paying you for? Get out of here. You know? So this poor project manager is like shaking and saying, what am I going to do? I don't have the authority to really fix the real problem. Do I just go along with it, or do I wait for a consultant to change me out? Anyways, okay, so here we go. Integral value creation and preservation of the project. Well, here we go, from 82 million to 220 million. So everybody, so PTT had to pay one fare to $220 million. It's over $17 billion. Zero. You know, of course, the good Thai people buying gasoline subsidized. You know, I mean, it's a tragedy. But what's also an interesting situation that I want to get back to is that, you know, when we talk about risks, like deep water drilling, not many people know about deep water. It's very, very few people, and I'm one of the few. And what I usually do is I'm an advisor to a company or a government oil company or whatnot on how to do this kind of stuff, how to drill the well, how to plan it correctly. And it's interesting to note that PTT, you know, they're not too experienced with deep water. They know about land operations, and they know about jackup, like in Songkla, Rayong, out in the ocean. But as far as these floating drilling rigs, they're sort of like getting new at it. But right now, they're going to be drilling in Myanmar area, offshore. And then maybe later on in the Andaman Sea, offshore Thailand. But if things aren't properly done, they could maybe have an oil spill also. You can imagine what would happen to that tourism. It was a big situation. So it's very serious situations. And you're dealing with companies that are very proud, of course, but they really don't know 100% that this technology, this new technology. And then lastly, you get consultants like me from a different country, and then they're going to say, well, that's how you do it in your country, but in our country, this is the way we're going to do it. So it's very challenging because you get to work with people, upper management, corporate culture. You get to deal with people, the national culture, and then again, all the problems, which are changing. Okay, plan and reduce the impact of risk. What am I getting at? What I've found is that a picture is worth more than the words. As Kuhn Pencer said, words are worth 7% of the value, which is basically words are worthless. And as I just spoke with one of my associates, what consultants normally do is instead of doing anything to solve the problem, they'll write a report measured by the kilogram, by the hour, charged by the hour, or by the kilo. They don't, and so basically they're just hiding the solution and saying to management, there you go. So the problem is still pending, okay? So what I've done, you know, I said, okay, probability, impact, or impact probability. We say this is a bad situation. It's in the red. It's going to have a high probability and a high impact. And I'll explain that, impact and probability, just to recall, to refresh your memory. And then here are separate problems in the medium zone. And these things right here are really nothing to worry about, but it could be a problem tomorrow. So really, the idea is identify what is a problem, identify if it's a serious problem or a little problem, and then lastly, assign resources, human beings, you fix this one, you look at this, you look at this, how can we mitigate this thing? You know, that's the way to attack it. And what I've been doing with different companies is really kind of highlighting, here's where we are, and unless we do something, don't do something, this is going to start getting worse, like a bacteria or a sore. You know, it's going to get worse. So what happens is I make one of these things up depending on the project, every couple of weeks or a month. And I say, these are like stars. Are we moving more into the red, or are we moving from the red back into the yellow, into the green? Because it's a flag. And even management, even the most ignorant management, can understand this. And if they see this happening for 2 weeks, and 4 weeks, and 5 weeks, and maybe even more going into the red, they're going to see and they're going to feel that something is a problem here sooner or later. And then you can explain, well, this is how are we going to fix this if you want to know, Mr. Manager. Okay? So what I would do is try to create diagrams like this, and you can make it for a technical situation like drilling, shallow gas potential, or completions, or you can make it like this is our competitor, the bank. Today we've got SCB over here, but tomorrow they're becoming more competitive and getting more of our customers. So I was going to go to Miss Spencer and say, Miss Spencer, what are you going to do about this to drive SCB back into the green? You know, so it's not a threat to us. So this is basically what I'm trying to move to. Say, okay, we want this is before, this is after. You can chart this whole thing for whatever your business. Okay, so here's the problem, like what I think happened in Horizon, Deepwater Horizon. This is the project management scheme of things. You got initiating process, it starts, and then it dies down. This is time. Like quite this well that we drilled at top of it, we spent $220 million. We spent $220 million in 6 months. That's a lot of money. Quite a few million a day. If you make a problem, a mistake, you got to continue paying that money until you figure the solution. So you start the initiation. Yes, we want to drill a well. Then you plan it. Okay, we're going to plan the well before it's done. But unfortunately, then it starts. The planning phase goes down, 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 and then things happen in the execution. So it's great, 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 and then everything's great. But then what happens is the assumption changes. In other words, we didn't expect to have a salt section, which is basically plastic. It moves down 2 kilometers below us. So we've got 2 kilometers of water. We're drilling 2 kilometers of rock. And now we've drilled into something that the geologists didn't have any idea about. Everybody designed the whole thing based on this not being there. But all of a sudden it is there. Okay? But the problem is we're like halfway through the job, we're close to the end. But the planning is like next to zero. So if I go back to the management, I say, we've got a problem here that could be quite critical. And what they're going to say is, we got a design freeze. Design freeze means we've got a document, everybody signed off, all the partners, the government agencies, everything in there is like chiseled in stone. We can't change anything. So everything that we had based our assumptions on are in stone. But we know with current feedback halfway through the job, things are not what we thought they were, of a major nature. And that's really where the problem comes in. So what happens is management can either decide to address it and continue the planning and bring this curve back up, or they could say, alhamdulillah, this is the way it must be. Or they'll just cross their fingers, close their eyes, and say, just keep on going, it'll be all right. And again, I'm a consultant working with these different companies, and I see it in different shades and forms, and it happens all over the world. And people are people. And chances are, they're going to just close their eyes and kind of like cover up and just say, well, let's hope for the best. And unfortunately, we'll go over these Niagara Falls. For example, one well I did in offshore Rio de Janeiro with a pre-salt. we were drilling it, and then I got feedback from other offset wells, other operators of nightmares, horrors happening. They were a little bit deeper below where we were going. I said to the supervisor, we really ought to listen to this. It could affect ours, it could impact our program also. My answer that I heard was, don't do any changes, it's design freeze, continue drilling ahead, keep on going. I said, as a consultant, yes sir, you don't question management. It may be, oh God, it wastes a lot of money, and I see that all the time. I used to get sick about it. I used to think, this is a lot of money, we really can't do this. But after a while, they're going to spend the money if you're there or if you're not there. So you just get used to it and just let them spend their money. And then of course you will subsidize. I mean, it's a very sad thing. Anyway, this other, so anyway, that was $60 million. So they started the well, and we ran into the same problem that with the offset wells had. But we weren't planned for, well, I was planned for it, but the management, they were crossing their fingers. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and we had to abandon it. As a matter of fact, that well that we drilled in Papua, $220 million, we never got to the objective. We had to stop short because of safety reasons. Meaning, maybe if we had drilled another 50 meters or 100 meters, we would have found the gas zone. It's probably still down there. We spent $220 million just to go so far, but we couldn't finish our job. So this happens an awful lot. You're so close to it, but you have to stop the project. So anyway, what happens is the planning goes up, but then the planning goes down, signs the agreement, the contracts, the government, blah, 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 blah. But new information is happening here. New information is coming in here. But are people integrating it or changing the plan? Not really. Like the change management is really for a scope change. Modifying something that was expected anyways. But when there's a fundamental, like suppose we want to build this hotel of 50 stories, and we plan it with concrete, but we get, and this is actually happening, we make a building, we make the plans, but then the cement, the concrete is lower quality. Meaning we get to the 10 stories and then 20 stories, and all of a sudden we got cracks. We go to 30 stories, and there's more cracks on the foundation, and we know we're never going to make it to 50 stories. Who's going to tell the boss or the stakeholder? So anyways, so then you have the controlling process, which is kind of holding hands and trying to communicate with upper management as best as you can, who really don't want to know the problem. They're going to say, you guys, we're paying you, you fix it, make it go away. It's so easy. But the thing is, you don't have the authority to do what you have to do. So that's when a lot of people here say, it's a very difficult situation. It hurts the stomach, ulcers. So anyway, so the project is finished. Maybe you did finish it, or maybe you didn't. The building is incomplete. Or the field, or the oil and gas well wasn't drilled to the target. And then everybody calls it quits, and then you start paying off the rest of the bills and arguing between the limited partners and the operators. Okay, so anyways, I think this is kind of half the problem, is that really planning should continue to a certain degree, gathering the information, and then maybe having the planning process changed as agreed by the shareholders. Otherwise, you're wishing that this is going to be a happy ending. Okay, so in the oil and gas business, unplanned events happen all the time. Really don't know. Seismic information is really very poor information. It's like maybe 10%. It's 90%. You don't know what you're going to get into. Every day you're spending $1 million to $1.5 million a day. So you're basically like drilling ahead blind. You're like feeling your way. And then all of a sudden your nightmare happens. And then okay, so the risk plan may not have been updated. Okay, so what is it? There's only really two concepts here, X and the Y-axis. Let's say the Y-axis is probability. And the probability is either it's a good chance or it's a poor chance. It's probably not going to happen. It's either 20% going to rain, or maybe 80% is going to rain. So you're taking a probability. It's qualitative. And then the impact is, if it does happen, if it does rain, what's going to be the damage? Is it a big problem or is it a little problem? And then how do I mitigate it? Well, in this simple example, if I think it's going to be 80% chance of rain, I'm going to mitigate or minimize the impact by taking an umbrella. Instead, if I'm smart, then most guys don't do it. Women usually do. So women are much more sensitive, probably, to mitigating impacts. Anyways, so what you want to do is you want to say, is this really going to happen, or is it a very small chance? If it does happen, is it going to put us out of business? Is it going to stop the project, kill the project, or is it just going to be a small issue? That's exactly what we're plotting. And so here we go. Impact of risk, low, high. We plotted either axes. Probability, low. This is 0%, 10%, 20% chance of rain. Here's 80% chance of rain. Impact of risk. Is it cold or not? Low level, medium, and critical. Again, this is the red, yellow, and green. And so really, like I said, management of every color and stripe and understanding can understand this. That's what makes it a nice little tool. And then when they start looking at this, and then they start asking questions about this, then you have their attention. Then you can maybe do something about it before it's too late. So you're trying to communicate on a, I hate to say it, on a low level, upper management. Because they don't understand a lot of this gobbledygook technology stuff that you do. And they don't want to admit that they don't understand it either. So anyway, so they got these words here, qualitative and quantitative. And a lot of fancy people talk about this all the time without really knowing. Everybody's impressed, but it's really quite simple. What is qualitative? It's judgmental. It's like, oh, I think it's going to rain, or it's a very small chance it's going to rain. It's just my feelings. So these are like feelings. It's like laziness. They're very good at qualitative. And quantitative is exactly, is we talking 78% chance of rain, or are we talking 75% chance of rain? How deep are we going to go? So we're trying to make basically an educated guess to the likelihood or probability, is both the same word, of a risk happening, and the consequence or impact, what's the damage if the event should occur. And I might stop here real quick and also mention, we're talking about bad risk, but there's also the other side of the coin called good risk. In other words, you can apply it to a good thing. In other words, I want to increase the probability of something happening, a good impact happening. But I want to decrease the probability of a bad impact happening. Okay, so you can actually look at it at two different sides of the coin. Like, well, as the Kuntensri, SCB is coming up, moving up, and getting our competitors. But on the good side, we might be able to hold on to our customers, drive SCB down, and maybe get SCB's customers. So we've got two. So there's two ways of looking at this thing. Okay, so here we go. The big word here is a risk matrix, risk impact matrix. These are another key words. So qualitative means, is it I feel good that it's going to happen, or it's not going to happen? Quantitative means it's going to happen 25%, 50%. It becomes numeric. So here we go. We got impact or consequence. It's a small impact. Well, if it rains and I don't have an umbrella, it's okay, no problem. But with a woman, her hair is going to get wet, so all of a sudden she considers it moderate. Again, it depends who you're talking to, So anyways, and then you say, well, the likelihood of rain is very low, maybe 10% or 20% or maybe 90%. Okay?
So if it gets to be very highly probable and it gets to be in this category, then we've got the red. So here's that red section, here's the yellow, and here's that green section. Okay? So we want to watch things that are going from here to this. As an increase, that's bad. Things going from there, from this back down is good. You want to say, who's assigned to take care of this problem, and they're doing a good job by bringing the problem down. So this is another way to get points, you know, as far as getting a raise and everything. I had this problem assigned to me, and we've basically been bringing them down. Somebody else has had problems assigned to them, but they're still there after a couple of days or months, and maybe they're even increasing, going higher and higher and higher. So in a sense, this is a simple tool to allow you to, as a manager, upper manager, to say, something is not very good here. It's been sitting there for a month or 2 months, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. Basically, got their attention. And then those who are able to drive it from a bad situation to the good, they should get rewarded, or they should be promoted. Okay, so let's talk about probability again, and then the next slide I'll talk about impact. So I'm just using letters here because there's so many numbers, too many numbers. You have different probability depending on what you're talking about. It's either a remote, or less than likely, or a highly probable situation. Or you could say it's a 5% or 20% or 60%. Or you could say, this is my automobile. I don't think it's going to break down. I'm going to drive from here to Chiang Mai, and it never broke down, so it's very remote. It's a very low probability. But I keep breaking down, overheating my engine. I don't know if I want to go to Chiang Mai with this car. On the other hand, I keep having frequent occurrences of my engine overheating. Of course, I'm not going to drive it from Bangkok to Chiang Mai. Okay, so this is the probability range. And then on the other side, these are the metrics, impact, some more letters. You can be measuring severity, cost, time. Here, oil spill for safety. Oil spill, if I've got less than 1 barrel oil spill, it's negligible. 1 to 15 barrels, I got to report it to the government. Minor, 15 to 100 barrels, it's getting moderate. So over 1,000 barrels, I got a big problem. On the other hand, if I've got accidents where I got first aid or just a cut, it's minor. If I have lost time or multiple accidents are happening, maybe the same kind of accidents happening on this drilling rig, I've got a critical situation here. Or people are getting hurt or killed. On the damage, if it's small change, $100,000. You see, this is really for small business, like 7-Eleven. And with the oil business, like I said, a well's going to cost, deep water well's going to cost about, let's say, $60 million to about $120 million, one well. And so you're really talking more like it's over $25 million. And then severity, okay, cost, if the cost is negligible. And again, this comes up with that scope creep we were talking about. If someone keeps putting in more and more wishes, I want to have this redesigned like this and this paint color, right in the middle of the project, of course the schedule is going to go up, as we heard from the previous talk. And of course that means the cost is going to go up, and the time to do it is going to go up. So all of a sudden, things that were negligible before the scope creep are becoming moderate and major. Okay? So you can almost say, well, if you put this change of scope, you can almost plan on going from a 10% excess expenditure to maybe 20% excess expenditure. If you tell the shareholder or the stakeholder, if you're willing to accept this jump in probability of the higher cost, please sign here. You do it at the very beginning. You don't do it when it's too late. And again, that's what's so nice about this chart. You can just say, okay, one day it was in yellow, now it's in the red. But here is your signature authorizing this change of color. And the beauty is again, it's not your fault. See, that's what consultants do. They always try to be neutral. It's not my fault.
And everybody hires a consultant to take the blame, but the job of the consultant is to say, it's not my problem, it's not my fault. I tell you what you want to hear, but I'm trying to do the best for you. And again, if you're not diplomatic and communicating with the stakeholders and the managers, then they just say, hey, bye-bye, there's the door. No sad people. So you have to learn communications. And really, as I'm listening to the previous talk, the universities, here in Thailand, they should maybe pick up on this, teach the engineers and the technical people how to communicate better, how to be more diplomatic, to sell their ideas or to communicate a problem. Right now they don't do that. There's no skill sets, okay? So you basically have people who know what the problem is, but they keep their mouth quiet. They don't know exactly how to say it to the upper management. Then you have upper management over here who just doesn't want to hear about any problems. They're thinking about happy things. And maybe they were transferred from another business unit that doesn't even understand the technical details. So even if you did tell them the problem, he says, oh, that sounds bad, but you'll take care of it. So they really don't appreciate it. Okay? So the problem is communications, as we've been drumming it over and over and over again. And so anyway, so we're talking about impact. How do you measure impact? Well, you can measure it for different categories. Like quality, for example. If the quality is barely noticeable, like the bad cement, if the quality is okay, we'll probably make 50 stories. But if the quality is unacceptable, then of course it's critical. We'll never get past 30 stories. Just like a lot of these buildings. And critical is the end item is useless. Well, this oil well, this gas well we drilled, 220 million, it was useless. We couldn't drill any deeper to see if we had something or not. It could be a gold mine down there, of gas, but we just couldn't go any further because of the physics. So again, it's another issue. So everything you're talking about, you measure impact-wise along a different axis. You've got probability, chance, then you've got impact. That's your x and your y-axis. So then we go back to this deal again. There's our probability. Here's our impact. And after you gauge this, the unlikely, or less than likely, or whatever it's going to be, and you might also ask, who's going to gauge this? Who's going to be deciding whether it's going to be a 1 or a 2 or a 3? This is again where you have to talk to experts, not just inside the company, but also service companies. Because what happens is, you're the owner of the project, you assign a contractor to do something, but then the contractor says, we've got a problem here, but they don't know, or they don't communicate it back to the owner. Okay? So what happens is, the way to decide this is to have a forum with the critical people, the contractor, the engineers, the technical people, as well as some of the shareholder people. And then as they talk about the problem, they'll say, this sounds like a 3, but it may be a 1. So basically it's a union, it's a group thing, okay? And you can have experts, academic experts, or consultants, or reading technical papers, or your own internal people. But the main thing is to ask different people their opinion and to say, you think this is a bad problem? You think, ask the same question. And then hear what the answers are. And you get a good feeling for what should be graded. Okay? So really it's a group effort. Not one person, not the project manager decides. A lot of people decide. And okay, key points to successfully implement a project: identify, is it a problem or not? And focus your attention on the middle, behind, focus it on the fires. Don't waste your time on the little stuff, because there's only so many hours in the day, so much resources. And unfortunately, people will always address the little stuff first and say, I'm getting to the big stuff later. And then later never happens. You're too busy with little stuff, because tomorrow's another little stuff. Okay? So what you need to do, identify what's little, medium, what's a big fire,
upper management says, you take care of this, you take care of that. And the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I want to see what's happening. And I want to see what's happening from the words of the outside contractors, as well as our internal experts, and maybe some other academic person as a neutral party also. That's what I would say if I were the manager. And I wouldn't have to know anything about oil and gas drilling. I could see that there's a problem. I could say, who's in charge of this problem? Who's the owner of the problem? Okay. And then you make your little chart, keep it updated to its position. Its position determines its priority, as well as like a vector. Is it increasing or decreasing, or is it holding steady? Just watching out for all the things that can happen. Risk changes with time. Today, a low risk could be a high risk tomorrow, and vice versa. Vice versa is good. Somebody's doing their job. Then you know who's doing their job and who isn't. The risk is still there. Either the person doesn't have any idea what to do about bringing the risk down, or it's not doing its job. So it's really a great management tool. It's very simple. And periodically review it every couple of weeks or months or quarter or whatever. And put it in your monthly meeting, the chart. High probability, high impact, the most critical. So you should assign your best people to take care of that. And again, a lot of people assign the wrong people with the wrong skill set to fix too big a problem. Which is really sad, because that person understands I can't fix that problem, but I cannot say no to the boss. So you're really not doing justice to your staff. And again, we were talking about teamwork, so you're making trouble in the team. And that's basically it. Just going to go right back to that one picture again. It's not a big, not difficult. It's a matter of doing it. And like I said, you can speak Spanish, Portuguese, Thai, Indonesian. And all you do is, this could be for banking, it could be for insurance, it could be like all of a sudden the policies. We've been selling insurance policies and people are dying and collecting. We're spending more money on this issue, on this policy, than we're taking in. Maybe we should stop that insurance policy. It could be anything. So anyways, that's basically the gist of the story. Things happen. So you got to keep your eye on the trigger here. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Robert, for a very informative session. I will use similar tool on both project execution and proposal development.
Yeah.
The task is more difficult on proposal development when you identify the risk in this manner and quantify as a line item and present to the senior management. The problem is they say, we are never going to get this job.
Don't worry about it.
Because the way you put it, it goes over a couple of millions.
That's right.
So they say, take out this.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
So,
Well, this is the whole point. This is you're dealing with people. And you might as well learn about it up front instead of in the back when all the money's already spent. So in a sense, it's interesting before the project really ramps up to find out who is like that or not. What kind of people you're dealing with.
and the real, hit project manager takes, because he says, okay, this risk is there. Do I have the budget for budget line item? And we say, no, we didn't provide it.
Yeah.
So,
And then you have all the finger pointing.
yeah. So this is a difficult.
Yeah, it's not easy. But like I said, I used to have OCA about all this waste. As a matter of fact, another story was Mexico, Pemex, Petróleos Mexicanos. I'm speaking Spanish over there, or I'm speaking Portuguese in Brazil, right? Because I have to work with the local culture. Anyways, they've never drilled a deep water well. They just drilled land wells and jackup, which is more like $20 million for the jackup and maybe $5 to $8 million for the land, right? So we're talking about deep water of $100 million nature. anyways, benchmarking. I was trying to tell these folks about benchmarking. Like baby gloves, right? So you guys know what you're getting into. Everybody wants to do the big thing. Like we can do it also. Actually, well, I won't say. There's a lot of big oil companies, national oil companies. So anyway, we take I benchmark. I said, here, this company, we're going to be drilling a well about just near the Texas-U.S. border with Mexico. So we're going to use a rig that's drilled in Corpus Christi and Brownsville in the same general water depth and below the mud line as we were planning in Mexico, right? The average, the same crew, the same equipment on the rig. We just took a couple of boats, tugs, towed the rig down to the Mexican side. So I said, this costs about $60 million in Texas. Okay, with this knowledge. That same well cost Mexico $250 million. 4 times. I said, God. Well, the Mexican people just end up paying the bill. They're poor. Sad. But you know what was even more sinister, of course, is that they get the money from the world banks and whatnot and charge it to the well. So they really, the more they lose, the more they make. So anyways, that's why I had my MBA for. Questions?
I want to ask you, when you rate on the probability and impact, if I'm only one person, rating is easy. But you have to work with the other stakeholder, your manager, senior manager, probability member, consultant, educations, research.
Yeah, vendors,
Vendors, yeah. So it's come up with what technique you use for getting consensus.
Well, that's in the book. There's that Delphi method, and there's the direct questioning method. It's in the book, in the PMI, as far as techniques. But
What works for you? What's your favorite?
oh, it all depends on the outcome that I want. I only invite those who will agree with my idea.
That's all nice.
There's a little bit of politics behind it. In a sense, it's not consultants. I mean, they're paying you to keep them out of trouble. It's like babies playing with matches, You don't want them to burn the house down. They want to play with the matches, and they're paying you. So it's a very touchy situation. And like right now, just recently, in Indonesia, I just finished a year contract with the Japanese, Japex and Mitsubishi, 50%. And Indonesians, 50%. I was the only, in the middle, right? And of course, they go with their own groups, Japanese, karaoke, and the Indos do their family thing, right? So anyways, they've never really done any deep water drilling. And so you gotta be politically correct, you gotta not hurt anybody's feelings, but everybody's the boss. So again, that's what makes or breaks. You can have all the information in your hand, all the technical data validated, all the evidence, but unless you can sell the story to upper management that they buy it and that they do something, you still don't have anything. You're just a good detective, but that's it. The killer is still free on the streets. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions? Nada? Okay, well, thank you very much. And if anybody wants to get oil and gas, it's a good business to be in.
Thank you very much.